to Third Tuesday Conversation, the ELCA Youth Ministry Network's monthly podcast. Our goal is to engage in conversations affirming that youth ministry looks a million different ways in a million different places and with a million different experiences. My name is Veronica Brito, and I'm coming to you from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Who's with me today?
Hey, this is Jessica Noonan coming from the Houston area.
And this is Alex LaChapelle coming to you from Marquette, Michigan in the Upper Peninsula. And we saw each other not too long ago, and I miss you already.
I know. We had so much fun.
And if I was smart, what I would do is I'd create a mission trip to Philly or a mission trip to Houston. And then I'd have a good excuse to park myself in your worlds. So that
anytime.
Soak up. Because I think that's one of the hardest decisions you make, especially if you're new to youth ministry. And even if you've been in youth ministry a long time, the question will always come up, especially from some church members. What are you doing this summer with our youth? Where are you going? What are you doing? Is it hands-on? Is it informative? Is it to respond to the newest hurricane? Is it to respond to poverty in a place that we've been praying for? How are you going to make sure that our youth are active and traveling? Because without a mission trip, they won't want to come anymore. And I think that that's not true, right? But with that, I ask you, what is best, worst, most impactful, most memorable mission trip when you think about the word mission trip, whether it is as a leader or maybe even as a youth?
Mm-hmm.
What comes to mind?
Yeah. I thought of two as I was preparing. So I don't do youth ministry full time anymore, but back in the day, we took high school students about 8 months after Hurricane Katrina to New Orleans. And what you have to understand is our church is, Lutheran Church, and our synod, our geographic area is the Texas-Louisiana Gulf Coast. So our synod begins in Brenham, home of Bluebell, for any of those who know that ice cream. And it goes all along the coast of the Gulf of Mexico and goes to New Orleans. And so, these are our friends. We had been doing events and we have relationships with these people. And actually, the weekend that Katrina hit, many of us were gathered together at our camp for a youth leadership retreat. And the folks from Louisiana had gotten to the camp at the far west side of our synod. They had come from the other side of the synod, the east side, driving several hours. And as they arrived was when they were telling folks to evacuate. And so they had to turn back around and drive back to Louisiana to get to their families, right? Because people were going different directions. You couldn't just say, "Oh, I'll meet you here," because you didn't know. So, there was a lot of investment for myself and for the folks in our synod, because these are our people. And so one of our friends, Mike, who lives in that area, had invited us to come out and to really do a service learning experience there. And to me, the memorable part of that was, hearing stories, learning about, how this has shaped their life, and of course, seeing, what had happened, and then being able to respond to what they were asking us for, right? What their needs were at that time. And, I think we didn't go in with assumptions, right? And I think that's a little bit of a danger in doing mission trips or service learning trips, is that sometimes we have assumptions of what they need. So I think it's something we have to watch for. But I think, anyways, the most striking point of that trip for me was we were there over St. Patrick's Day. And so there's a big tradition of lots of parades on St. Patrick's Day. And we were, I can't think of the name right now, of course. But the area we were in, it was underwater for weeks. after Katrina. And so nobody was living in this particular area of the New Orleans area. And yet the streets were lined with people, like lined with people in their chairs. I mean, drinking beer, celebrating because it was St. Patrick's Day. But they didn't live there. They were living somewhere else. But they had all come together for this little piece of normal. And behind them, everything is just destroyed. So it was such a weird juxtaposition. Is that the right word? I mean, that there was, let's do something normal, let's celebrate and have fun. And yet our lives have been destroyed literally by a hurricane.
Yeah, the paradox of the cross and the resurrection, in a visible format for you to kind of take with you, so that when you hear it on Sunday, you start to go, I have an image of the cross, but I also have an image of the resurrection. And now you can put, a little bit of vitality and livability into that conversation. What about you, Veronica?
Yeah, thank you, Jess, for sharing that. One of my favorite mission or servant trips was I led my synod in a synod-wide trip to Detroit. And this was before the gathering was there. It was about almost 15 years ago, but we took a bus and we went because Detroit is our sister synod, I think it's also Philadelphia, one of our sister cities. So we took a bus. It was just one bus of us. And one thing that I really liked is that we had teens and young adults and adults, and just the relationships that grew from that. And I think that it showed young adults that they were still able to do these activities and still able to live into their call, or still finding out, what's their role in the world, and also developing youth leaders as well. So we took a group and we really lived into service learning. And so we got to Detroit. I want to tell y'all you're talking about the best and the worst. I'm the leader of the whole group. All the people in Detroit have my phone number. I've emailed with all the different people. I think you know where this is going. I email all the people. We're coming. We're in Ohio. We're almost there. And on the first day, we go to a farm. And the lady is like, put all your stuff on this table at the farm. All your items. And we put all our items on the table at the farm. Then we went around the farm because there's so much agriculture there in Detroit that people have turned the land into, literal farms, goats, chickens, pigs.
Cool.
Yeah. And so growing fruits and vegetables. And so we're touring the farm and we're seeing the big turkey waddling around and helping and cleaning up the lettuce beds and meeting some of the neighbors who come and get fruits and vegetables. Anyway, we get back to the table and everybody grabs their bags and everything. And guess what's missing? My phone.
No.
The only phone I have with all of our contacts in that phone. And it was gone. And it was crazy. I couldn't even call home. I'm calling people from my friend's phone who went on a trip as well. And I'm like, it's me. Thank goodness I printed everything out.
Oh, good for you.
Have paper.
Yeah, yes. We don't do much of that nowadays, but yeah. Oh my God. Did one of the animals take it or did somebody steal it, you think? The
lady, I connected with the farmer on Facebook. And so I was friends with them on Facebook. 6 months later, she was like, I think I found your phone. She said, was it in the dirt somewhere?
Oh.
So maybe something really did pick it up.
Yes, I tell you.
It was just in the dirt. I don't know what happened to it, but she said, it looks like it's been out here for a while. So I think nobody ever found it. It was just there. Maybe a coyote had it or something.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was like one of the terrifying things as a youth leader. You're like, I'm the one leading the whole trip. But fortunately, there were other adults there and even young adults. And at that time, young people had phones too. So I think I was the only person without a phone. But the thing I really liked about that trip, and I'll tell you what happened. I didn't even need my phone. You know why? Because on the second or third day, the power went out at the church we were staying in. And we had to run out and get coolers full of ice and put the milk in the coolers and everything that was refrigerated, we had to put in the coolers, the lunch meat, everything, because we would pack our lunch every day.
Mm-hmm.
And after a while, people's cell phones died because they couldn't charge them. And so one by one, is that the sound of cell phones dying? People and everybody just kind of like looked up from their phone. And you know what was next? The Spirit. The Spirit came in there and was like a gentle whisper over everyone. And I overheard two girls look up at each other. Someone, don't you go to my school? It's like, oh my gosh, we're the third or fourth day in, and you didn't even realize this person goes to school with you. And then they started figuring out playing flashlight games, and they started playing hide and seek. And then they would look out for each other when we would go different places. They would say, oh, now you could charge a little bit. Now you charge your phone a little bit. So they would share the plug and the charge. And we got to this church in the suburbs. And the church in the suburbs says, oh, you could just stay here. And so we asked all the planners in the group, the young people who went on the trip, and every single person said, no, we came to be in Detroit and we're going to stay in Detroit. And maybe it was like 2 or 3 days later and the lights were back on. And so I was just so glad and so blessed. And it was just a great experience about, like you said, Jess, service learning, hearing stories, seeing that living out in action, and then responding without making assumptions, and just wanting to stay where you are and not seeking the comfort of I need to charge my cell phone. There's no lights. It was trouble getting to the bathroom at night because that church was dark. But all in all, I say it was such a learning experience, and it shaped a lot of who I am today.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So that's what I wanted to share.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, to hear both of your stories, and, the service learning aspect, that's a newer kind of piece of the conversation. I think when you look at your traditional mission trips, the thing that comes to mind for me is the first mission trip I ever went on was freshman year. We went to a camp in Colorado. We took 15 passenger vans, 2 of them, packed with people. We river rafted. We got to the camp. We sang camp songs at night. We put in posts all around the camp, tarred them, sunk them in the ground, singing songs. We looked like a little work crew. Got tar in my hair. It was like we were messy. I remember I didn't bathe for the week. It's just a terrible confession, but it's the truth. And it was like the most fun I've ever had. And we had this beautiful campfire where one night we said, maybe if we wait, the sky will open up and we'll be able to see the stars. And we're singing songs. All of a sudden someone looks up and goes, it happened. It happened. It's one of my favorite, memories of looking up in the stars. But it really filled me. I don't know that it was a great gift to the community, maybe to the camp, right? Like did some work for them, but it was mostly like we had an amazing trip. We connected with each other. We connected, I think, with God. As far as community and long-term relationships and memorable moments that we connected to what the interconnection, like you said, what do you know about Colorado, Alex? It's like, no, I don't remember. I don't even remember the name of this camp. So it still is formative, but it doesn't have that service learning aspect where they were making sure to say like, well, let's talk about the trees, let's talk about the gradients of Colorado soil and such like this, and then actually this camp burned down like 3 years later, and we just went all our work.
Oh
And so I remember
all our work. Oh yeah, we're sorry for the people, but
yeah, my fence, my tar. And I remember getting some pictures, and what was cool was we did have this moment where we wanted to give something, and so our church made a donation, and it was kind of via the relationship that we had formed with this camp.
Yeah.
But I think that's so interesting, you know. Okay, so moving with that, then we've got an image of, you know, the high school Alex goes. You told stories that I think also brought in the newer version of why is it memorable? Not just because I had fun, but because it was people we knew. There was an invitation from people in our synod to participate.
Mm-hmm.
Veronica, you talked about, you know, chaos breeds community. And I think that's a huge thing for mission trips, that some of the most chaotic is terrifying in the moment, but the memories that are formed from, and we didn't have lights and we didn't have phones. And I looked up and I realized I'd never met the person in front of me. That image of how do you create controlled chaos? So how can I take a phone away maybe for a day or for 3 hours to push people into uncomfortable zones so that we maybe don't have to hope for disaster, but can just live into for the next couple of hours, right? You know, so if you were talking to, you know, our swath of people with all their experiences and things like that, how would you say you should prep? What's like one prepper in your head for when you think about those trips or other trips that you go, make sure and Veronica, you already gave us some good ones, paper copies of phone numbers and itinerary, and an availability of phone limitation is huge for creating community. Jessica, you gave us, you know, connecting with your synod so that the opportunity is built in, whether it's forced in the situation of the thing is happening so close to home, but also what can we do for places where we might see them again, even as close as synod assembly? What are some things that come to mind?
Yeah, as far as preparing for a trip, I mean, I think, gosh, nowadays there's so many ways to do that. If you can begin building those relationships within your group, that was something we always did, was that when you signed up, there was a commitment that we would meet this many times leading up to the trip. And it was right to pray together, to Bible study, to play games, to eat together, right? But really it was to build relationships so that when we got on that bus or that plane or whatever, train, that there was already connection there. That there was already some trust, because, you know, when you go on a trip like that, you don't know what's going to happen, right? I mean, anything can happen. And so you want to be able to lean on each other, and it's a better experience for everyone, right? If you start that. I would say the other piece that, wow, you can do so much with now these days. I feel like I'm such an old lady saying that, but is get to know the community, you know, that you're going to. And so that's, you know, doing research together, or, you know, Zooming with leaders in that community, you know, start to do some kind of exchange. I mean, you know, right. You can just do that in so many different ways that weren't available 20 years ago. And I think that's pretty exciting to think about all the ways that you can start to build that relationship as well. How about you, Veronica? What are some of your ideas about how do you get ready for a trip?
I think that, you know, our role as a leader of youth ministry is definitely, I agree with you, Jess, is building those relationships of the young people that we have in front of us. And I would say to be inclusive about different young people's ideas about what they would like to do, what kind of change they want to see. Be intentional about choosing something that the young people, you know, that you could really feel your group leaning toward a certain arc of justice or of partnership with community and following that lean, the way they're leaning. So if they, if you live near, a reservation, or if you notice that a lot of your children are interested in learning about that, then do the research. Don't just show up in a van. There are lots of
Leave me alone.
organizations. I know. You're like, bye, y'all. Good luck.
Awkward.
Fight your way out. No, like you said, just do your research. Once you have an idea, run it past the kids, but go to them with research and say, I really think that, you all would enjoy this and we can learn and get a lot out of it. During the trip, make sure you check in as you go along with it. Some of the trips are plug and play, which means you just show up with your young people and there's already a curriculum and there's already certain meals and there's already a job to do, quote unquote. But make sure you're checking in with your young people individually and as a group outside of the pre-planned curriculum.
Especially if you got to debrief something.
Exactly. Because sometimes the groups that you pay to do that, they might not do it. And if you haven't done your research, and you got to be careful about their theology and what you teach in your own congregation, and does it match what the what adventure you're about to go on?
I know that was. I clearly remember a trip in Boston where we had great relationship building and service opportunities, but every night we had to debrief the worship led by this organization. Right. And it's, and it's one of those things, it's hit or miss because it's a lot of different people, but it was rough.
And
it was rough.
Get feedback from other youth leaders who have worked with that group. You can definitely log into the network, log into the network's Facebook. Has anybody used Costa Rica Fighters for Jesus?
They are going to give your kids guns. Please don't use them. Yeah, I think that's really huge. And
shooting.
It's just a military. You're just joining the Costa Rican military. Don't do it.
No.
My children understand bayonet warfare way better now. I think too, the piece, we've captured such a beautiful image of what happens in the group on the trip. I'm also thinking about the congregation. A lot of the stuff you said is applicable to the congregation. Let the congregation know where you're going, what you're doing. Let them in on the education. You watch that documentary with your group. Make sure they watch it maybe while you're gone so that they're, prepping for it. What are your kids, some of the check-ins are like, what do you like? What's the comfort food you need after 6 days kind of cooped up with the same people? Oh man, I could kill for a Reese's. You go, okay, cool. Can we get some care packages and Reese's are high on demand, and get the congregation or give the younger students who are looking at what's coming next the opportunity to create care packages that you can present from, hey, we're high schoolers. This is from our confirmation students. It's confirmation students. This is from our 3rd through 6th, invitation into those connectivity where they get to get excited about it, but also they helped.
I love that.
And they're part of it too. And I think,
idea.
So I think those are also the things to think about, what is the congregation's role? Because fundraising is huge. Some of us find a church that goes, we already set aside 20,000. We've got an endowment that gives you another 5, predict your trip. If it goes over 25, I'm sure we can find the cash. There are churches like that. I've yet to find them, but I've heard stories. Heard stories. I dream.
There's tales of such churches. Yeah.
It's a place. It's right outside. It's right outside Orange County, I'm guessing. But it's one of those things though, where you have this congregation that goes, what did you guys do? And a lot of times they go, we don't know what our kids are doing. And then you go, wait, how did you not know? We had a whole week. We were in El Salvador. We had a whole week. We were in Detroit. And you didn't know anything about it? Well, how did we know? Well, our kids didn't tell you anything? No. So I think during the trip, what are some things that you could do to create some connectivity with that group? Do you have any thoughts or things you've tried?
Within the group or the congregation, you mean?
Like
Or
group to
both?
congregation. Yeah, like how do
Mm-hmm.
you keep the two connected even in the midst of the trip?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I mean, I know. I mean, I've seen congregations use like the social media, create specific groups just for the pictures and stories, like live as they're going, which is super fun. I mean, even for the gathering this last summer, I got to go with our group, and we had a small group, and I every day I try almost every day I texted pictures or just a little line to our parents to say, hey, this is what we've been up to today. This is a speaker they loved, or I would remind them, hey, you can watch the live stream tonight. And they did. And when we came back and they were like, oh my gosh, the speakers, and so that was a fun connector between the parents and the kids that, hey, we both got to hear this cool speaker. What did you think?
Nice.
I think that, like you said, just the social media aspect, like you can actually have your youth do a social media takeover where they're posting every stuff on the church's
Love it.
pages every day.
Nice.
They're writing blogs for the website or for other social medias. They're turning in videos that could be shown in church if you have a video system to show.
Right.
And say, oh, day 3, we got a video. Let's show it on the big screen or whatever. And then also I would say, to have a welcome back luncheon or, a report out where they engage the congregation in what they did and not just stand up there and speak on Sunday morning, because that can fall kind of flat, but actually have, a spaghetti luncheon where, it's free and the kids are serving, and then they actually talk about their trip. They show photos, they show videos, and each one of them is sitting at a table with different members of the congregation. So if it's, 5 youth went, each one sit at a different table.
Mm-hmm.
If you have 25 youth, I guess 2 could sit at a table with and intermix with others, and then have conversation cards on that table where they're invited to ask what was something you learned during a trip and things like that. So I think that's a great way to get the congregation involved in what the youth are doing and the trip they went on and everything like that.
Mm-hmm. And I remember this last trip, I also invited the congregation to pray for the students. And so we had their names listed in the bulletin for a few weeks and just said, please keep them in your prayers as we get ready for this adventure. And I mean, you could make that really specific about like, hey, this is our travel day, pray for these things, or on this day, we're doing this, because there are folks who will do that. They want to know how to support you in that way. How about you, Alex? What are your good ideas?
Yeah, well, as you're talking, some things that we've done in the past, like we've collected postcards from where we're at. So especially like in New Orleans, right? You can get some really great postcards that capture the cities, spaces that you've been maybe. And then, just write a couple postcards back. You can also use it as a fundraiser. Some people don't like this, but I think it depends on the congregation. You might say, this is tiers. If you give this much, you will get a postcard from, one of our youth to the things. Or you can just do everybody gets a postcard, which I think is also really great. But using that ability to say, like, it'll arrive almost as the kids are getting back. But what a gift to have this kind of moment in time, and then just double check what they write. That's always, I think, a safe bet. Just a little quick scan. I got so many beads this week, Mrs. Johnson. You wouldn't believe it. And it's like, what does he mean by that? Huh? What does he mean by that? And you're like, don't worry about it. He's a very friendly boy. But I think, the other thing would be, just that invitation to allow people, maybe even like a devotion. Create a devotion, like kind of like you were saying, just the idea that if they can follow the trip, if you can pick a reading, for every day, and maybe even if you've got a couple students who would like to write a couple words about, the verse, and that could be something really beautiful that also stands in time for that moment, so that they have it, the congregation has it, to say, look at our young people thoughtfully predicting their existence in this. What about the coming home, though? Is there anything else you'd want to add to that? Anything going forward? Like, how do you come back from, we talked about this a little bit already with Jess. You come back from New Orleans, you're all fired up. We had the greatest week ever, rock stars for everyone. And then you go, okay, football practice, band practice, start of school, one last family trip. We can't get these students together for another 4 months. How do you invite them to remember what they experienced, whether it was mission with their hands or mission with their minds of listening and partaking, or a little bit of both? How do we invite them to take that into their school year, into their family lives, into their homes, and make it a part of their new existence, having gone through what I would call a mountaintop experience?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that follow-up is key, right? One of the things that I love about the gathering, because that's just fresh on my mind, is that, intentionally you build into the day this time at night to kind of debrief and reflect, right, on that immediate reaction and experience. But after any kind of trip, I mean, I need this as well, right? Not just students, but you need time to really kind of think on it, right? And to absorb all of the things you saw and heard and did. So I think it's super important to do something at least a month after, give them some time to process a little bit, and then bring them back together to, hear their stories and what they really are taking away and how it connects, right? I think that's the thing, is that there's need all over, right? There's need in our own neighborhoods and communities, as well as in other countries and other states, right? What is the connection back home? Are there ways we stay in touch with the people, right? Like for, the trip I talked about to New Orleans, well, we clearly already had connections, right? These are our literal neighbors, a few hours away. But when you go other places and you learn about, the need for better education, well, what's education like in your community? Are there ways that you can, grow and expand on what it means to serve, but in your own hometown? I mean, even mission trips, you don't have to go far away. Sometimes you can plan them in your own, we live in the suburbs of Houston. I mean, we're big enough actually where we live. We could do a mission trip here in this immediate area, or you could go to Houston, which is the wider, not white, but broader area, to find out, what's going on in this area. So anyways, I just keep talking. How about you, Veronica?
I just love what you said, Jess. And a way to connect it throughout the year, specifically mission trips, would be, like you said, to find things that are close to home that, like I said before, you should really ask your youth, like, we want to continue this good feeling and this service that we look to Jesus to lead the way for that. And so let's each person think of a project that you're interested in doing. And then, let's all do it together once a month. And so you might have a young person who read about shoes, donating shoes. You can prompt them you could say, here's a list of some local things we could do.
Miss Veronica, can't we serve the Dunkin' Donuts by eating their morning share of donuts? So that, that's good for the business, right? Aren't we supporting?
Sure. And then we'll take those donuts and give them out to people.
After I've had mine.
It's all sorts of things. And I think it's time we give some of that creativity and that mindfulness to youth, to say, it's just not us, baby bird feeding you. We want you to be able to continue this for the rest of your life. It's lifelong learning and lifelong serving. And one day we're not going to be your youth leader anymore. But I want you to grow up to be the kind of person that Jesus calls us to be, which means you start your own, you continue your own. And so, what is something you care about that we could tie to service? Maybe it's just pushing older people into Sunday service at a nursing home, like bringing them from their room and bringing them to the service.
Yeah.
Maybe it is having a shoe collection and taking those shoes and I think they turn them into something. I forget. I'm up here saying that it should be, but I don't know what I'm talking about. What if it's, collecting care kits for people who are unhoused, with soap and deodorant and all kind of stuff. It could be whatever there. What if it's walking dogs at the shelter? You might have to be 18 for that, but you got to check all rules. All local laws should be checked first before you take the youth out, start nailing people's rooftops on and things.
Yeah.
But check those rules, especially for Habitat for Humanity. I was like, you're too young. You can't go. Oh, I'll just stand on the side. Then you see them picking up a hammer. You're like, well, wait. We signed a liability. So, check it out. I mean, you may have a group of older young people who are over 18 and they're like, man, I wish we used to serve and I miss it so much. And I would say, well, you're all actually 18 now. So you could actually do a Habitat for Humanity where we could do drywall down in a part of town where, usually you wouldn't go to. So I think that creates joy in young people to know that they have ownership and that their friends at church are actually joining them on that journey. And they might invite some of their school friends. Who
Right.
knows? You never know.
No, I think that's great. I mean, what a great conversation, y'all. I'm thankful. And, the purpose of a mission trip, you're gonna have to find that for your congregation a little bit, and maybe it is just to start moving your hands and feet. But for some of those congregations, we're already busy with our hands. Are we slowing down to take an awareness and a mindfulness of our space in a community or a space next to the communities that we rarely think of? So, I hope some of these things were helpful. Some of the what to do's, maybe don't take my donut eating mission trip too seriously, but otherwise, thank you for your stories, especially, those moments of impact and memories and things like that. But for you who are going to dive into a mission trip, I think what you heard here is there's no real bad start. Everything is going to work out, even when it feels like maybe it's not working out. Trust yourself. You're more prepared than you think. How do we want to get out of this thing? What do we got coming up? I know we just did the E, so that's not for a while, but
I know. Well, we have a couple of announcements. I don't think anything brand new, but we want to say thank you to all who are members of the network. Your membership makes things like Third Tuesday Conversation, Oasis, Connect Journal, and Formation Co-op, and Extravaganza, and much more possible. If you're not a member of the network, we encourage you to join. Our memberships are what make all of this possible, and we're grateful to be a community that cares for this ministry. Thanks so much for listening. New podcasts will be released on the third Tuesday of every month. Be sure to subscribe so you receive them as they come out, and share them with your friends, of course. And finally, thanks to Paul Amlin, the 3TC producer, for his work and putting up with us. Have a great week, and look for our next episode being released on the third Tuesday next month. And this is Jessica signing out.
Yes, Veronica, you guys have a blessed rest of your week.
And this is Alex. The mission is ready.
Get those donuts.
Yes. Donut shop. I'm going on a mission right now, guys. See you later.